This is Good Omens, Episode 5, The Doomsday Option, on TV Podcast Industries and in association with... Podcast to go. Welcome back, Acolytes, to this episode of the Good Omens podcast on TV Podcast Industries. Yes, episode 5, The Doomsday Option. Yes, who is it? Shadwell or Adam Young? You decide. Send in the votes, please. Yes, I am one of your hosts, John.
And I'm your other host for this episode, Derek. Chris, unfortunately, is travelling once again. He doesn't stop travelling, does he?
I think he's going to an airbase outside Lower Tadfield, and right after this, I've got to hop on a plane and go there myself.
Nice. Everybody seems to be drawn there. It's like a big magnet, isn't it?
As do you.
Yes, everybody's going there. Nice. If you listen to our outtakes from last week's episode, you may understand what that's about. But everybody's on their way to Tadfield, aren't they? Unfortunately, Chris won't be here for this episode. He actually may not be here for our final episode of Good Omens as well. It just depends on when he gets back and when we start our recordings for Jessica Jones Season 3, which he also has to do next week. So we're trying to fit in, probably in his busiest travel season, we're trying to fit in 2 completely different shows that he's supposed to be doing with us.
No, he's not going to be here.
I said he might not be. He doesn't know just yet, and we don't know just yet. He might be able to be on for the last episode.
I think we need Madame Tracy here to kind of connect with him through the power of seance, dare I say it.
That would be pretty cool.
It would be pretty cool. But if you want to connect to us like Madame Tracy through the power of seance, or dare I say it, voicemail through tvpodcastindustries.com, just click on the right-hand side tab for 90 seconds of voicemail. Or you can seance us through email at goodomenspodcast@gmail.com. And indeed, seance us through Facebook, through our Facebook page. Just go to facebook.com/TV podcast.
I don't think that's an actual adverb though, John. To seance us. You seance us, we seance us, he seances us. I'm not sure it's an actual word, John.
I think it's in the same way that informated is also not really a word. I'm just channeling my kind of, military speak here for making up words and stuff.
I like it. Seances. I like it. Well, we do actually have a piece of feedback that we're going to get into before we get into our spoiler-filled review for this week, because we got in a piece of feedback, a voicemail piece of feedback from Steve Brown. I've never felt more like a member of Podcastica than when I saw an email with a voicemail from Steve Brown. #WeAreSteve. Our friends over at Podcastica, who have all of those wonderful podcasts about all the other great TV shows, will understand this, because Steve sends in some wonderful voicemails for their show. Really interested to hear what he has to say about Good Omens.
Yeah, fire away, Steve.
Hello, Good Omens podcast. This is Steve, and I know I'm late. I thought I had time to send through episode 4, but I just finished watching episode 4, and I saw that the podcast is already out. So I hope it's okay to go ahead and send you my thoughts on up through episode 4, but including episode 4. And I just wanted to say I love you guys' voice. You sound great. And I'm a believer in the Bible. I'm a Christian, and I can appreciate though the jokes and some of the misunderstandings and the things that come up as funny that people who may not necessarily believe it as scripture and believe in God find funny. I can appreciate it, and I don't get offended by it. Nick Offerman without a mustache just seems wrong, and I loved when Anathema Divine said professional descendants. That made me chuckle. I love the way Crowley gets his messages from from Lagur, especially in the movie theater there with the Teletubbies, or it was like a knockoff of the Teletubbies killing each other with the blood and guts. I thought that was really, really funny. I loved Crowley using the "Do you feel lucky?" line from Dirty Harry. I thought that was really good, and can't wait to hear what you guys thought as I listen to the ones that you've already recorded, and I'll try to get something in before you record episode 5 if I can. Talk to you later.
Thanks so much, Steve, for those thoughts. That's really good. He has actually gotten in some feedback for episode 5, so we're going to have that at the end of the episode. But really, loving your thoughts about this episode. I always wondered, really, because I know that with Terry Pratchett and with Neil Gaiman, both of them do take a lot of things from scripture and turn them into stories. You know, there's a lot of comic books they use and a lot of their books themselves where they use things from scripture and kind of put a little bit of a twist on them. A comedy twist, of course. You know, these books
absolutely.
are thousands of years old, so having a bit of fun with them is always good. Good Omens is a really good example of that, where they're taking, you know, lowly angels, you know, people like Crowley and like Aziraphale, and kind of putting an idea of what they would be like if they'd been gotten to by humanity, I suppose. So I like the idea that humanity is seeped into these two angels who are supposed to be wholly good or wholly bad, and they've kind of come out the other side as being kind of grey, really, in their opinions about the world, because they want to save the world, not go along with their standard template, I suppose.
Yeah, I think I think it comes from a place of just being funny, absolutely, and I think it also shows that humanity is a force for extreme good and extreme evil, and as much as it has infected these two angels, one demonic, one not so demonic. So I think it's a really interesting thing. I love the reference, Steve, there that you made to the Teletubby Armageddon. Seemingly they have gone through it slightly earlier than the human race, with Hasta ripping off one, or maybe it was Lala or Poe's head, I don't know, for probably contractual, trademark, and other proprietary right reasons. It's not exactly the Teletubbies, but I completely forgot that they were effectively a riff on the Teletubbies.
Well, a children's programming, definitely. And yes, you're right, that little line about that was taken from Dirty Harry of have I used all of my holy water or not? Take your chances, punk, kind of thing. You know, that idea that he's feeling very like Dirty Harry is really cool. Thanks so much for your thoughts, Steve. It's really good to get a voicemail in from you. What Steve did there was he just recorded his voicemail on his phone and emailed it into us at the email address that John mentioned, goodomenspodcast@gmail.com. We'll get some more feedback from Steve at the end of the episode on episode 5, so looking forward to it. If anybody else wants to send in your feedback, even if you don't get it in time for our final episode 6, send it in to us. We'll most likely email you back, because we really want to hear your thoughts on this show. It's been really good fun.
Yeah, good stuff, Steve. Thanks so much for your thoughts on episode 4. I think with that, on with our spoiler-filled review.
Yes, John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for Good Omens episode 5, the Doomsday Option?
Sure. Crowley has lost his best friend, but in the burning remnants of AZ Fell and Company has found the prophecies of Agnes Nutter, witch. He doesn't know what to do until Aziraphale, Ghost Angel, finds a way for his ghostly body to talk to the drunken demon. The angel tells Crowley, demon, to get his arse to Tadfield Airfield Base while he finds a body to possess. Luckily, Madame Tracy is at hand, as she is holding a seance to earn a little extra cash, but gets a real visitation as Aziraphale merges with her and leads Tracy and Shadwell to the start of the end of the world. Meanwhile, at Hog's Backwoods, Adam is having trouble keeping control of his friends. He wants their support, but when he gives them their free will back, they turn and walk away, including his beloved dog. The them finally convince Adam that what he's planning is all wrong, and he realizes that he needs to work hard to stop the apocalypse. As the riders of the apocalypse arrive at the US Airfield Base, with some directions from the local neighborhood watch representative, JP Tyler, Tadfield starts to get busy, as everyone else converges on this teeny-tiny village in rural Oxfordshire, also known as the new center of the universe and the final place for the Armageddon standoff.
Nice. This episode, you know, it feels like the apocalypse actually wouldn't happen, or Armageddon wouldn't happen if it wasn't for JP Tyler of the Neighborhood Watch, because he gives everybody their directions. Even Adam and the them, he could have stopped them and gotten their parents to stop them going there, but he lets them go, or they have a little interaction with him at least. But everybody seems to have their moment with JP Tyler.
I thought that was really, really good. And of course, the moment that he has with Crowley, you have that great little sort of device of what he actually wants to say as to what he's saying. We kind of saw that with the nuns, with the wink, you know, what the wink means and what they're actually trying to say. And it's a really nice device here. It's really great that they've taken this little cameo here and just expanded it out in a small way, but in a really meaningful and great way, as all the main characters are coming through the Tadfield sort of main street to get to the US airbase. I think just generally and more broadly on this episode, I was like going, okay, they've got 2 episodes. How is this all going to work out? And I think it is played out, written out, structured out as a penultimate episode to get all these players into one place at this airbase really, really well. I think it's a real example of how you can do something as expansive and as large as this and make it work in a really snappy, funny way. So this is, for me, this was really, really good.
And not to go back to it too much about the book and how it was originally structured as well, this isn't very different from how it was structured. It's very much, that gets to Saturday, or gets to Friday, the day before the Armageddon, and then it literally just ramps up to the point that everybody is in the village. Within, about 50 pages, everybody is there. It's not jumping over anything that you would have really missed from the books. We'll talk about one thing as we go into our signs of the apocalypse that is skipped over and has kind of made a few people disappointed, I suppose. But overall, what's been done here on the TV show with putting everything into this penultimate episode, getting everybody together, is done as quickly as it's done in the books. There's not a huge amount extra added.
Yeah, but with that, on to our first sign of the apocalypse. A real seance and the return of Aziraphale.
And a brand new sound effect.
Certainly is, yeah. The cracking whip transition stolen very nicely from the Good Omens TV show. There is a great moment where Shadwell is about to rest up, at the instruction of Madame Tracy, after he has discorporated Aziraphale. And he is about to sort of lovingly, in this aura of pink, in Madame Tracy's pink room, lean back on the bed, filled with, squeaky animals, plush teddies, and a unicorn. And as he says, what kind of place is this? You get this cracking whip. Because it is not just a place of pink. It may also be a place of pain. But you have to ring ahead, remember.
Absolutely.
But it was just such a nice little transition here. We just thought we would use it for these signs of the apocalypse in this episode.
I think you could definitely see why Madame Tracy would need about 2 or 3 days' notice. She needs to get rid of all of those toys off the bed. I kind of love this. The indication here, I suppose, is that Shadwell thinks of her as a woman of the night, but actually she's much more into this kind of these seances and readings for people now. That's not her job. If it ever was her job in the past, it might have been, it might not have been, but it seems like Shadwell is now in this room and he's kind of looking around going, what kind of debauchery would go on in here?
But I think getting onto this seance, I have to say now, I have 2 favorite seance sequences that have been put to TV now.
Right.
This one for pure comedy seance value. The other one being the seance in Penny Dreadful season 1 with Eva Green.
Oh, yes.
Purely for its dramatic effect and it's
scary
punch.
as hell.
Yeah, it's really horror. This for the absolute other end of the spectrum. This to me was amazing. I laughed out loud. I reminisced because I love the fact here that Brenda, who's come here to speak with her dead husband Ron, and the spirits around there, they're really kind of northern here, and there are moments here that just make me laugh out loud, from where she's giving out because they started serving Korean food, and well, what do you do with kimchi? Who knows? Then just moving, Ron sort of getting exasperated even from beyond the grave with Brenda, that you never gave me a chance to get a word in edgeways. And it's like, Brenda, and she goes, yes, Ron, shut up. It's just so nicely done. And just the Miranda Richardson as well is an absolute star here.
Yeah, she's absolutely brilliant. I love this idea of a seance, this idea that you want to contact a person that's passed. You want to contact a person from beyond the grave. And it's never really talked about any other time whether they want to speak to you, I love this idea that she's been coming for 7 years, so she believes she has seniority over the other 2 people that are at the table. She's kind of going, no, I need to get my story out first to Ron. Ron's been dead for 7 years, and she's been coming here every week, it seems, to tell him her stories of the boring things that are happened after he's dead. It's like, you never gave me an opportunity to speak when I was alive. I'm dead. And she goes, be careful of your dicky heart, Ron. And he goes, I don't have a heart anymore. I've been dead. It's hilarious. hilarious. I absolutely love this moment. This voiceover is played by Johnny Vegas, who, if you're in the UK, you've probably seen him on many, many shows. He's a really funny comedian who always plays the part of this kind of drunken, bumbling character. I love in this that he has this stutter that shows that he's always been somebody put upon the whole time by his wife, the whole way through his life. And I love that she won't even let him get away when he dies. I just think that's a terribly hilarious kind of comedic moment that no, it's my turn to talk to him. I have to tell him all about the wedding I was at last week. How boring a conversation to bring somebody back from beyond the grave to have.
Absolutely. I think also as well, the Korean food gag and the kimchi, it really reminds me of Peter Kay in Phoenix Nights, which is, again, it's a very small parts series, about 6 episodes set in a northern social club or ex-miners club, which really is kind of, becoming consigned to history. But there they have a similar gag, but the new fresh food, the thing that's kind of, they don't understand to their sort of older palates or more traditional palates is garlic bread and cheesecake. And it's just, again, it really fills in a nice sort of history of this idea that people don't get certain foods that come and become fashionable or really become popular. And that to me is just hilarious.
It is really, really good. Just the scene overall, Miranda Richardson is magnificent in this scene, channeling Aziraphale, channeling Michael Sheen's voice coming out of her the whole time. I love how the original possession happens, where I think we had the subtitles on for it and just kept saying burping and farting while she's making cow noises and
elephant noises, all kind of stuff. And even when she's doing the false seance bit where she's trying to pretend and she's just making certain noises, and then you have that moment with Mr. Scroggy around the table saying, "Do you know a John? Jim? Tom, perhaps? Steve? And it ends up being Dave, and he's like, "Oh, I knew a Dave from Hemel Hempstead," and it's kind of like, it's just all parts of this, from her doing the false seance to when she is getting possessed by Aziraphale, are just absolute pure class. I think it's why I love Miranda Richardson.
I absolutely love it. Yeah, I love that the false seance ends with, well, Dave says from beyond the veil he wants you to know he's doing fine, and Mr. Scroggy goes, "But I just saw him the other day walking his dog."
Exactly. Yeah, it's just so hilarious. Funny.
But I love the reaction from Miranda Richardson again as she's doing this false seance to hearing that a guy doesn't know a person called John. No offense, John, but everybody knows a John
exactly.
or a Dave. That's the old gag in the UK, isn't it? Everybody knows a John or a Dave. And she kind of breaks that moment and looks at him and goes, "Really? You don't know a John?"
Exactly. It's just pure class. I love just as like Brenda, Mr. Scroggy, and the other lady kind of leave here, that you have this conversation. Mr. Shadwell wakes up to find Madame Tracy and Aziraphale having this conversation, and that actually Madame Tracy, probably the first time she's ever been possessed, that she's kind of quite calm about it. And I kind of like that idea that she had sort of at peace with this possession. I love the fact that Shadwell comes back, that he can hear Aziraphale's voice, he recognizes it, and Shadwell says, "That must be a Southern Pansy." And you have the comeback from Aziraphale through Madame Tracy saying, not just any Southern Pansy, the Southern Pansy, absolutely owning that kind of derogatory nickname that's been assigned to him, really, really nicely done.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, that moment with Madame Tracy where she does completely accept the fact that she's been possessed. It either says that she has previously in the past conducted seances that work, or that just all of these years doing seances mean that she's not particularly surprised that somebody can come in, I don't know whether it stands out to you. It's definitely something that was in the subtitles. When his voice starts to come through Madame Tracy, a couple of times you see in the subtitles that it is Aziraphale's voice, a couple of times you hear that it's her voice, and a couple of times it's their shared voice. And one of those times is when he says that we see Ron in the room. That's both of their voices saying it, so she potentially is able to see ghosts as well, which I just think is an interesting touch. It's nothing that really will play in too much more. We've only got one more episode to go, but I just think it's an interesting touch that possibly Madame Tracy is in contact with Ron, but she was actually just saying, I don't want to talk to Bron again for the 5th or 6th year in a row. We're going to leave him over in the corner and we're going to make up something so we can bring in this Mr. Scroggy and get him his money's worth.
Yeah.
Because that face on Mr. Scroggy as this whole possession is going on, he's absolutely loving it. He's got his head back and he's just laughing and smiling with joy at the whole drama of the situation.
Well, that's it. And with the lightning and the weather,
Yeah.
and they ask Madame Tracy, did you get the weather as well? And she's like, oh, yes, it is very seancey, isn't it? And really nicely done. I think as well, you know, what happens here with the possession of Madame Tracy is Aziraphale calls to action both Madame Tracy and Shadwell to tackle and go after the Antichrist. And I love the moment where Shadwell's like going, well, I don't know, even though he's been boasting about his finger being the ultimate weapon, the Doomsday Option.
Yeah.
And of course, it's nice that he thinks he's that, but he's being told to go after the Doomsday Option effectively in Adam Young. And he's kind of trying to just squirm out of it a bit, you know. We are a witchfinder sect, not the Antichrist sect. And you have Aziraphale going, oh, well, you've had plenty of time and experience to go after witches. This will be no problem. He's like, well, we kind of haven't really got any. And then he's like, how many nipples does the Antichrist have? And he's like, oodles, absolutely oodles, nipples everywhere, says Aziraphale. So it's just, again, coming back to that interesting fact that witches have got loads of nipples.
Well, that seems to be the explanation. It seems to be one of those things.
One of the identifiers.
Yeah, it's one of those ones, as you always find for this kind of thing in the Witchfinder army and the history of them all. Well, effectively, there were no such thing as witches, or real witches, the ones that they were looking for. So they always had these false indicators for them. The idea that every single witch had a hooked nose and had green skin and a pointy hat, and they also had multiple nipples. All this stuff came from the fact that the Witchfinder army were people that didn't sleep with women. They kept themselves pure and didn't have relations with anybody else. So they made up this concept of what a witch really is over these many, many centuries. It's turned into this idea that all Shadwell ever does is read the newspaper to find out whether people with multiple nipples are found. That's all he does, and that's what he calls himself as a witchfinder. But he does have this wonderful weapon, the thunder gun of Witchfinder Colonel Dalrymple. I love how he describes this, where he's wondering how this could be of use to Aziraphale, and he says to him, well, it shoots silver bullets, and Aziraphale says, no, that's for werewolves, and he goes, it shoots garlic, and he goes, that's for vampires, and he goes, shoots bricks. I love how simple it is. It's effectively turned this thunder gun into a catapult. A high-powered catapult, but a catapult all the same. You know?
The garlic might be useful for famine, because we kind of see fairly vampire-y looking teeth on famine later on in the episode. So yeah, I think the garlic being blasted out of the thunder gun may certainly be effective against famine with his old pointy teeth.
maybe. But what a great way to get us onto our second whip crack and our second sign of the apocalypse.
Yes, the horse people of the apocalypse reach Tadfield Air Base. But first off, they do stop off at the Happy Porker Cafe. And I'm kind of thinking, is that because they like bacon butties, people that go there, sausage butties, or is it something else completely? A Happy Porker, does that mean something else completely?
Do you know, weirdly, this is something that reminded me of you, John. I've known you now for over 10 years, and there's a phrase that you took from Blackadder, I think, many years ago, which was Merlin the Happy Pig. And you do say it quite often, very weirdly. And the minute I saw it on screen, the Happy Porker, I was like, that's John's favourite little phrase.
Yes, and when I saw the Happy Porker Cafe, I was like going, what a strange but funny name to call it. I'm with it.
Exactly. But this is where they all merge together. I love how disappointed War seems to be, because she's travelled all around the world for centuries, starting wars all around, everywhere, every single far-flung destination she could possibly go to. And she ends off with this little calf getting tea for these 4 riders of the apocalypse, and then going off 100 miles up the road to go to this tiny little airbase. You know, she seems totally disappointed. You know, it's all described by Death. Death eventually gets there and says that the reason why they're going to this tiny little airfield is because, well, everything's controlled by computers now. You can do it from anywhere, remotely from anywhere. And this access is at Tadfield, this tiny little airbase, because you don't need it at somewhere massive. You don't need it at the Pentagon in the US. You need it just a little access to the internet from a small airbase.
Yeah, exactly. I love as well that, when Pollution walks into this cafe as well, that you have all the litter
that's so
sort of
cool.
being blown in with her, which I thought was a really nice touch. And it's funny because you don't see her arrive on the bike, but you see the bike parked up outside.
Mm-hmm.
You'd kind of think it'd be really nice just to see it leaking oil or something. Or when she's driving through Tadfield, that it's the most sort of smoky exhaust emitting bike of the lot of them. It's really adding to climate change. I thought that would have been really nice, but it's just a normal bike, especially as you do something like the litter blowing in with her as she arrives. I thought that was so good. But hey, sure, it's fine. But I just thought that'd be really nice that it was belching so much sooty exhaust.
Yeah, the choking smoke out of the back of the exhaust of Pollution's bike would have been a really cool touch as well. I did like the touch of Death, always there waiting for them, like he always has been for everything. He doesn't arrive. Death doesn't arrive anywhere. He's always there where he needs to be when everybody gets there. That's kind of the point, right?
I thought that was just a class moment, actually, because it's something, that phrase you know of. You've heard it all before, and just that it's incorporated in that way, because I was waiting for Death to arrive, and then he goes, but I never went away.
Yeah, I've always been here. Exactly. Really, really cool. One thing here, this is what I was talking about in the early discussion. This takes place in a pub with a kind of a pokey machine, the whole concept of what Death's playing. He's playing this trivia machine. In the books, there are some other characters introduced here, which are kind of beloved from people who've read the book for the last 30 years. And I can kind of understand that they're a little bit disappointed, I suppose, that these characters have been omitted. The reason why is because the characters that are there are Hell's Angels, and they're a gang of Hell's Angels with their motorbikes outside, and they meet this other gang of what they think is just another chapter of the Hell's Angels. So remember, humans don't perceive anything weird happening when they see these characters. They just look upon them and they look like other humans to them.
Yeah.
So they think that these 4 characters are Hell's Angels just like them, and try to ride along with them to go to Tadfield for the apocalypse, basically. So just they have this kind of idea of these really stupid characters that have been taken in by these people with really cool names like War and Death and Pestilence and Famine,
awesome.
And then they try and rename themselves from things like Reg and Dwight as their biker names into cooler names because they've met this cool chapter of the Hells Angels. But it's a great chapter of the book. I highly recommend reading the book, even if you have watched the TV show and you haven't read it before. It's still got so much extra stuff in there, as always with books. They're doing a great job of translating these to the screen, but that's just one of the added elements that I really enjoy from the book that they didn't get the opportunity to put in here. I'm sure it's always like kill the things you love when you do a TV show. Just to make the best TV show possible, some things have to be sacrificed, and I can understand why it wouldn't have been necessary in the TV show.
Yeah, I mean, I think as well, this episode has a lot to do.
Oh, yeah.
And that would have just added more layers into it, which possibly overcomplicates the production, the length of the episode, and so on. Because you've got to introduce the characters and the Hells Angels in that cafe, and then what are you going to do with them once they get to the airbase? So it adds stuff into it. I mean, it'd be great. It sounds awesome, but I mean, I can understand. Yeah, you have to sort of maybe clip a few things here and there for sure. It's
just another fun gag, really, and they have so many fun gags in the episode. They probably didn't need another one.
Yeah,
Speaking of which, because sometimes our side of the apocalypse really lead on to each other. My favourite gag, really, from the show, our third son of the apocalypse. The unkillable car.
Yes. This was amazing on so many levels. I think just to put it in a nutshell for me, from the M25 being explained as it looks like the dread sigil of Odiger, hail the great beast, the devourer of worlds, that this is kind of like an endless water wheel giving off low-grade evil through the worship and anger, and that it surrounds London. I just thought was really, really good.
Just the concept, every time this form of traffic jam on this main thoroughfare around London, that the Londoners are worshipping Satan and they don't realise it. I think it's absolutely hilarious. I love the description of how Crowley effectively got involved in the creation of it, where he says he hacked into a few computers and bribed a couple of people, and in the middle of the night he moved a few markers for the building of the road. Hilarious. Just love that he had to go to all of that work. And unfortunately, because he did all of that, he's now stuck in the massive traffic jam on the M25.
Absolutely. And I think that leads also on, because like Hasta goes, what's a computer? And of course, we have this other moment where Hasta has escaped from the antique answering machine. And just as a quick aside, oh my goodness, did I feel sick seeing all those maggots? The first one just wriggling out of the head top microphone. I was just thinking, oh no, she's going to eat it or something. The call center lady, as she's like going, who are you? How do you know my name? And as Hasta comes back really creepily, I know lots of things, Lisa. Yeah. And then just everything.
I think I should come out and meet your friend.
Yes, and everything turns to a sea of maggots, and then you're just left with the skeletons of all the call center staff.
Yes.
And I was like, oh my goodness. And then he appears next to Crowley.
As a former call center worker, I have to say I do like that they chose unsolicited outbound sales calls. Not a customer services call center for a big corporation or anything like that, or somebody that's providing a service that people call into. This is a person that's calling a dialing list that she's been given to really annoy people. It's probably modern life's worst job for anybody, and anybody that gets those phone calls hates the people on the other end of the phone. So I like that they've chosen that type of call center, not the nice type of call center where you call to get help.
I like that they got his surname wrong as well, so that it was Cowley,
Mr. Cowley,
with double W, which does that happen? Not very often. Just really good. But it ultimately leads to Hasta being sat in the Bentley car, ready to sort of get the job done on Crowley. Your time has come, and then we just have that fantastic moment where Crowley just speeds towards the flame, the ring of flame that's engulfed the M25 and surrounds London, and you just see Hasta going, what are you doing? Why are we going this way? As they enter into the flame and he's starting to discorporate, he's like, I hate you. And I think what's really neat is that you have God's voice over coming through, where she says, the reason why Crowley hasn't discorporated at this moment effectively is because, unlike all other demons, he has an imagination. He is imagining that there is no burning metal, leather, flesh, carpet, you name it, whereas Hasta couldn't do that, and so just is burnt off the face of the world. Exactly. It was so good.
Yeah. Well, as we've said before, every scene in this show matters. When you're doing a show that's only 6 hours long, for a book that takes, a good 12 hours to read, there's going to be things that you're going to have to sacrifice, and there's things that you keep in. And it may not have been evident early on, that scene that you thought was absolutely hilarious in episode 2, I think it was, the plants in Crowley's apartment, where they're shaking at the thought of Crowley trying to keep them alive and make them look amazing. That is the whole point of this here. He's keeping his car alive because he says, well, I got you from the moment you were created. I was the first owner of you. I've had you since 1927, effectively. I've kept you alive this long, and I'm damned if I'm going to finish this adventure without you, kind of thing. So he's forcing the car to stay alive and forcing his body to stay together as he goes through this massive flame. One thing that isn't called out in this scene, and I don't know whether it comes across or whether it needs to, we've all been in London, or we've been in London a few times, and we know how bad the traffic is. But the reason the traffic is so bad on the M25 right now is all of those news stories that we saw in the previous episode, all of the things about Atlantis coming back and the Kraken arriving and all that kind of stuff. It's obviously petrified everybody in the world. So people are supposed to be running around a lot more and trying to escape the big cities, as always happens in these types of apocalyptic events. They think the big disaster is going to happen in London, of course. It's because everybody would think that it's going to happen in a big city, so you get out of the big cities. But of course, it's happening in Tadfield.
And we also just have to have a moment for Horace, who couldn't hold it in any longer and had to get out the car to go for a pee just off on the M25. Because seemingly, as he begins to, hail the great beast, it starts off a chant that ultimately ignites the M25 into this burning magical ring of fire. R.I.P. Horace and his good lady, of course,
and the thousands and thousands of cars that were set on fire at the time as well.
Hasta, for me, I've absolutely loved the intonation in his voice. It's just that the high pitched freak out that he seems to have as they hit the flames, and then he kind of resigns himself. I just think it is played so nicely. This hate relationship between Hasta and Crowley, it's really nice. And Crowley's kind of I bought you from new, you will stay with me. And even just as he arrives at the airfield base that we'll talk about later on, that he says, well, you wouldn't have got that with a new model.
Absolutely. It's so good. So good. Ned Dennehy as Haster is fantastic. You're absolutely right. This moment of the screaming as he's burning up, it really does remind you of the scene in the last episode just after he loses Ligur, and he just can't stop screaming at the idea that this demon would use holy water to kill him. It's the absolutely horrible notion in his head. So he just can't stop screaming about it. But he's a demon from hell. He's not supposed to be scared of things. But Crowley is obviously also quite powerful demon.
Yeah, exactly. And of course we get the return to Queen as well, and those musical references. We've had these kind of peppered throughout the series so far, and here we have I'm in Love with My Car by Queen.
This is a Queen song that I didn't know, I must admit, because I've mostly, my father was a huge fan of Queen, so I've heard almost all of their songs, but there's a song that was released before I was born, and sung by Roger Taylor as well, which is something that I don't hear very often. Freddie Mercury mostly is what I think of when I think of Queen. But this song is called I'm in Love with My Car, and it's the first actual expression of the joke from the book. If you look very closely, just before they take off to go through this burning ring of fire, Crowley takes out a CD of Mozart and puts it into the CD player, and it plays the music of Mozart, but as they speed up faster and faster, the music starts to change and twist and turn into I'm in Love with My Car by Queen. In the books, as I described, I think on a preview episode or the first episode, in the books, the description is that if you leave any CD or any tape around long enough, remember there used to be cassette tapes back in 1990, if you leave any cassette tape long enough in your car, it will turn into the best of Queen, basically, is the joke. So back then, that's what would have happened. Now it's a CD that he pops in, and the CD that is Mozart turns into Queen.
Yeah, and of course we have You're My Best Friend as well, right at the start as Crowley is racing towards Aziraphale's bookshop and goes to get him. But obviously, as he realizes that Aziraphale is gone and he can't find him. So yeah, again, you have the Queen reference here to what's going on in the scene. So
I think there's about 6 Queen songs in this episode, but those 2 are huge standouts.
Yeah, certainly they're the big standouts for sure. I think the other thing we have to talk about here with the burning car is with JP Tyler in Tadfield as Crowley is looking for directions to get to the airbase. And ultimately, the Neighborhood Watch representative, JP Tyler, does say second left up ahead. He gives him the directions, but we have this moment of, well, what he wants to say is, your car is on fire. And it's like, as the conversation keeps on going and he's not said it, it's like, your car is on fire and you're still in it, you stupid man. What is going on? Just so much fun.
It's hilarious, isn't it? I love that he blocks it out of his mind. I love that the voiceover from God is going, he can't possibly believe he's not seeing a car on fire, but he must be convincing himself. He must see that, doesn't he?
It's ignore the elephant in the room, and in this case, it's a flaming Bentley.
Yeah, definitely reminded you of something like Hot Fuzz, right? That idea of the little town that's ignoring exactly what's happening in it to keep the kind of idea that it's a perfect little town. It can't possibly be a Bentley on fire in the middle of the road here.
Exactly. I mean, it's just really nicely done. I wonder if we'll ever meet Flaming Bentley.
Possibly.
But with that, on to our fourth sign of the apocalypse. The them are friends again. Yeah.
It didn't seem like they were going to be friends again by the end of the last episode. We had Adam basically telling Pepper, Brian and Wensleydale that they're no longer friends at all. He's sealed up their mouths. He's making them agree with him. And I love that you got Pepper. I know she's crying. I know that there's a tear rolling down her face, and Adam is admonishing her because this is his moment of triumph. He's getting to the point where he's going to turn the world back. He's going to give them everything they want. And then she starts pointing at her mouth because he's saying to her, tell me I'm right. Tell me that you agree to me. I don't know whether she's crying. I think she's just straining over the amount she wants to scream at him to go, you're wrong, Adam, you're just wrong.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, right at the start of this episode, we see them in the Tadfield Hogsback Wood with Adam with big, red, demonic eyes, And I think ultimately they have this roller coaster ride of their friendship here. And I really kind of quite liked it because, I mean, as kids, who didn't kind of go through moments where their best friend was someone that they was like, well, I don't want to speak to you anymore. You'd have that argument. You'd have that kind of breakup that would last for a day.
Or 20 minutes.
Or 20 minutes.
But not usually because your best friend was the Antichrist, right?
No, but the point being is that it is that thing that kids do. It's like there's some really nice touches here, that they are mad at him, and I love that. But they're equally in a heartbeat, in a flash, when he has his moment, and this is the whole roller coaster ride, they're willing to come back and help him again and be his friends. And I thought that was really, really nice. And those touches, even when they meet up again with their bikes to head off to the airbase, and they meet up at this juncture of a road, and they say, we need to get to the airfield base, off we go. And three of them head down the street, but Brian goes off camera and then joins up later, and it was like, did he just go the wrong way? And then he realized that no one else was there cycling around him. But then we thought about it a bit more, and it was kind of like, oh yeah, it's the thing you do when you're on the bike and you're pointing in the wrong direction.
He's facing the wrong way.
You go off and do the turnaround rather than get off your bike and turn the bike around on the spot. You cycle away, do the long loop back to turn around, and then you chase after your friends at high speed to catch up with them. And I was
it's a weird touch, but so obvious.
Yeah,
it's exactly
really
what you did
done.
at the time. As an adult, you'd probably step off your bike and turn it around and do it. But Brian's already on the bike. Why would he step off it again?
Yeah, exactly.
Just nice touches. But I love that they do mend the relationship. I think it's really interesting because Adam takes it really far here. He's shouting at them and telling them to smile. He's telling them to go along with what he's saying, and then says, I can make you smile if I want to. And there's that real, do you remember the video for Soundgarden's Black Hole Sun back in the 90s, that moment where everybody is being made to smile, their faces are being pulled back. There's that moment with Brian and Wensleydale and Pepper where all their faces are being pulled back into this smile, and the minute Adam releases control of them, that smile drops back to just normal, pretty angry looking faces from these kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other interesting thing as well is that when Adam unfreezes them, they decide to walk off. And it's at the moment where, well, what else could he do to us? And Wensleydale says, well, he could kill us. Yeah. And they all go through the point of saying, yes, he could kill us. Yes, he could kill us. And Wensleydale goes, yes, that is right. He could kill us. Yet they still choose to walk away.
Exactly.
And then are followed by Dog as well, who has been whining all this time as well. So it's really, really interesting. It's kind of like, he is, remember, confined by the actions and behavior of a normal dog. So his owner has been shouting and hurting people, and maybe Dog doesn't want to be part of that pack anymore, even though the Hellhound probably does.
Exactly.
But he goes off as well, and so this is really nice. And I think this is where we see Brian really step up here. He goes, some adults have messed things up. That's a reason to fix it, not destroy it. And it seems that Adam in that moment, the truth of children being quite open and blunt, not being subtle or trying to be sort of political about it or whatever, that truth hits something with Adam because they're his friends. Even though Brian also picks up the cricket bat to potentially smash his head in because he realizes that this guy is a threat, has gone nuts.
But Brian truly believes what he says. Brian is telling Adam exactly what he believes, exactly what his thoughts are. Is you don't just start from scratch when everything's messed up. You fix it, right? That's how it works. You have to fix things. You can't just nullify it all just because some adults messed it up. And if he's going to do that, if we have an opportunity to take him out, well, I'll take the opportunity. And I kind of like that from Brian.
Yeah.
I kind of get the feeling in this episode, it's not really said, and you don't really see it in this episode, but if you think about Warlock, the other boy that was born at the same time as Adam in the convent in the first episode, that's where Adam was supposed to have been brought up, in this family who moves around all the time and are surrounded by security guards. You get the impression that Warlock probably doesn't have a huge amount of friends. He's a bit of an obnoxious kid with the way that he's been brought up, in privilege the way he was. Whereas Adam's been brought up in this tiny little town with these lovely other kids that are all that all challenge him and all are interesting around him. I was a bit harsh on them last episode, saying that they were a construct, or they were pulled together by Adam to surround him with the kind of people he's supposed to have around, that is a little bit harsh. All of them do have their own motivations as well. And what we see here is, because of them being the people that they are, they're able to talk the Antichrist off the ledge into effectively stopping the apocalypse, which we think he's going to do.
I mean, I love the feistiness of Pepper. She absolutely stands up to him. You have the analytical element from Wensleydale, and then you have the sheer sort of truth-telling of Brian here.
And the dogginess of Dog.
Exactly. and Pepper as well. Pepper is a truth teller as well, I think, here. And it's here then that Adam seems to have reneged on what he was about to do. He goes, I don't know what I've done, but whatever I've started, we need to stop it. Yeah. And he still knows about his 4 friends coming, and they have to head to the base. And I'm still there going, is it that he will stop the apocalypse, or is it that he is still friends with his 3 and will protect them and be their friend all the time, but he's still going to fulfill the apocalypse? That is still a bit of an open question to me. I think originally watching it, I thought, okay, he's going to go and stop the apocalypse. Now I was wondering, but is he? Because he's still talking about these 4 people that he's going to meet, and I'm still questioning whether now he will actually try and stop it, or whether he'll just get caught up in the event.
And you're absolutely right, too. That's what's happening, I suppose. As we get into the final episode of the show, we're left with this kind of cliffhanger of, is Adam getting there to end the world? Because you do have this 400-year-old book from Agnes Nutter that's been telling us the whole time, this is the apocalypse, this is the day it's happening, and she's been right about everything else. So that's pretty likely she's going to be right about this as well, yeah? There is just one final sign of the apocalypse, our 5th sign of the apocalypse.
Yes, with the cracking of whips, like the cracking of thunder, we have the Tadfield Air Base.
That was a lot of work to do the whip cracks. I'm not going to do that for the next episode. Sorry, John.
No, that's fine. No, it only makes sense with this one, to be honest. Cool. But yeah, we have the amazing American Guard that basically lets everybody in to this most sensitive and secret of communications hub that effectively links all, at least the US and its Western allies' nuclear arsenal together. I just loved this guard, certainly when he faces the 4 bike riders of the apocalypse, as well as then you have Aziraphale in Madame Tracy and Shadwell arriving on their little scooter as well. And then the 4 kids just ride through, because I think Adam has opened the gate by himself.
That is hilarious.
So good.
The reaction from the guard, who's tried so hard to stop the angel and demon from getting inside the place, and then just the gate pulls back and it's like, who did that? And the 4 kids just ring their bells as they cycle on by him. It's hilarious. I really love it. And we have Anathema and Newton, who we didn't see much in this episode. We just had a great scene with them earlier on, which I'm actually going to talk about in notes. But they get into the airbase because Agnes Nutter has effectively gone, just go to this spot where the fence is broken and just crawl across the fence, and you have Newton kind of going, is this how easy it is? You just read a prediction and then it happens. And Anathema kind of goes, yeah, that's exactly how my life has worked for my entire life.
Yeah, that's true. The one thing I do like is how Newton challenges that a bit in the bedroom with... well, are you going to listen to a 400-year-old witch, or are you going to do things that you want to do? And I suppose it is that this is what she does, and she hasn't really thought about it in any other way than we must follow and we must observe the prophecies of Agnes Nutter. Yet Newton immediately says, well, do something different. Why can't we kind of go again, effectively? And that's because the prophecy doesn't really say that that's what will happen. So, I love that Newton has that challenge to Anathema.
And it's important to kind of underline it as well, I suppose. They're constantly saying here that they have this book of prophecies that are so accurate that you can't just read them and it leads you to what exactly you're supposed to do until you're in the exact situation that Agnes Nutter is talking about. That's the point when you realise what the prophecy means. So Anathema doesn't actually know what's going to happen next week or the week after that or the year after that, because all of these prophecies are only known to her when she gets to that exact moment. So we hear this thing of behind the eagle's nest an oak will fall, and she says all of her ancestors thought this was something to do with the fall of Russia, but actually it's to do with just a tree falling near the eagle's nest, near this near this base, effectively. So only because she was in Tadfield at that particular day, at that particular time, does she realise exactly what this prophecy means. So I think this is the first challenge that we've heard from Newton Pulsifer saying, well, how do you know how to live your life? Because you've never made any choices for yourself. You just followed exactly what this 400-year-old witch has said. So nice little thing that they're underlining there.
Yeah, exactly. We see also then the real four horsemen sort of take hold of the base and just death killing everyone immediately with a blink of the dead eyes or the snap of the dead fingers. And they're taking hold of the electricity so that they can take control of all the nuclear weapons worldwide. And we see all this all starting up, and effectively they are now having to wait for the arrival of the Antichrist here before that all kicks off as well. So this was really good. I did like that moment as well. I think it was an aerial shot. It's just as Adam and them are arriving on their cycles, and it's mirrored with the four bikes that are already parked up from the four riders. And it's a nice little shot that I think.
It is, and all the colours match, don't they? Each of the characters have a different jacket on, which symbolises that they're very similar to the Riders of the Apocalypse, but we'll see a bit more of that next episode. I think it is going to be Adam protecting his friends, I think, in our final episode of the show. But I do love this moment. I love that we're all in the same place at the same time in this tiny little town at this airfield base, because, as they say, everything can be controlled now from a tiny location. It can just be put on computer, and that can control the end of the world. And I love Death's response, which is, well, everything except for the death of the humans. They have to do that themselves, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Everything else might be taken out of the control of humans, but only humans can die.
They still do the dying.
They will still need to do the dying. Yeah, no, that's a really nice moment. Yeah.
Well, not that nice, but by nice, I suppose you mean accurate, right?
Yes, it's a nice and accurate prophecy. Yes.
Let's get on to final notes for this episode. Not a huge amount that I'm going to go into this time, because we talked about a lot of them throughout the episode itself. But the theme song that's played, again, we have another version of the theme song for the end of this episode. This one's played on pipe organ, and I think it's one of my favourites for the season.
Yes, it's very boding and very churchy. I mean, it does feel like Famine should be up there, sort of dressed like Dracula, in his castle in Transylvania, with sort of playing out the big organ. Yeah, absolutely.
With his big pointy teeth, yes, definitely. Yes. One of the notes from me, Neil Gaiman actually posted today, the day we were recording, he posted the card that he wrote for Anathema to give to Newton, the one that he gave to the kind of the team that create all this stuff for the show. He wrote the full card out, and effectively the card is surrounded by notes from all of her ancestors about the fact that she's having sex for the first time and will not have sex again with Newton Pulsifer. And it's a funny little card. I just wanted to read out what the actual prophecy said. He reads it to her and goes, "You go, boy, may fortune be with you," because that's a note from one of her ancestors, effectively. But the actual card reads, "Anathema of my bloodline, as the great storm rages, the line of my murderer will hold you tight beneath the bed. Once and once only, underlined, he will take ye, and ye in turn will take ye long-preserved virginity from his ever-untouched man-store. Yet the fine thrust of his great cockalorum shall bring thee to an ecstasy thou hast never felt. He is mighty, though he looks like someone hath dragged him backwards through a great hedge." Isn't that brilliant? I love that was actually written up by Neil Gaiman for this scene. It wasn't used in the scene itself. They thought it would be funny for people to see this card and pause it, but didn't actually make it to the screen.
There's another really nice note. Utter pornography. What was Agnes thinking? Really, really good. I think for me, the moment where Aziraphale comes to Crowley in the pub as well as this apparition, as this ghost. I love that the wavy effect of Aziraphale here, because it really intensifies Michael Sheen's kind of eyes and makes them really buggy. So there's moments in the conversation where his eyes kind of like just seems to pop out almost as he's saying it. It really adds emphasis to what he's saying.
Yeah.
It's a really nice effect here.
That actually does have a couple of really funny lines in it. The conversation between Crowley and Aziraphale, where Aziraphale's going, "If only I could find a body that would be able to take mine inside them," and Crowley responds with, "I'm not even going to go there." It's just hilarious. This whole shipping of these two characters, definitely after the TV show came out, and definitely among book readers, these two characters are seen as in a great relationship with each other. They're absolutely partners, as seen. I think in the book, Crowley never calls him his best friend. In this episode of the show, Crowley actually calls him his best friend twice. He falls to the floor in the bookshop going, my best friend is dead. And then when he sees Aziraphale again in the pub, he says to him, they took my best friend away. So he is missing Aziraphale just as much as Aziraphale's missing him. Yeah, no,
definitely. And of course, there's a little bit of a whiskey watch here because he is drinking Talisker whiskey. Yeah, nice, a fine malt whiskey, I have to say.
You know, we're getting up to Jessica Jones next week for the final season, so I'm sure we're going to get a lot more whiskey watching that than we're going to get on this show.
Yeah. But yeah, in fact, he's starting his second bottle. Pricey stuff, I would say. But yeah, a nice drop of scotch. I also really like when JP Tyler has stopped the four kids on their bike and he's kind of admonishing them for just being out. And you have Wensleydale turn around to him and says, I don't think it's illegal to be out or being out. And it's like, I'll tell your parents, Adam Young, I'll tell your father. And they just kind of cycle off. Yeah. You know, it is that moment where, you know, he is
just a nosy Parker.
Yeah, he is a nosy Parker.
Really nosy people that you remember as a kid. There was always one neighbour that would just not stay out of your business when you were a kid, just cycling around the neighbourhood, playing football in the streets. There's always one neighbour that wanted to report it to your parents, even though you weren't doing anything really wrong. I love even Pepper, who seems to be a pretty good kid. Like, she just sticks her tongue out to him going, oh, stop messing with us. It's summertime. We're just having fun. You know?
Exactly. And I think as well, it's maybe just that there is some kind of undertone to that idea, certainly from when the book was written, that it is not illegal to be out.
Absolutely.
Of being out.
You are allowed to be outside. Yes, definitely. That's it. That's kind of the end of our notes. I know there's another one that Bob Phillips has in our feedback as well. But before we get into that, John, overall, what did you think of the episode?
To be honest, I would give this episode oodles of nipples. Nipples everywhere. I have to say now, I have used the nipples one already as my out of 5. So, you know, if I were to put a number on it, I would give it 5 Southern Pansies out of 5 for sure. This to me is an amazing episode. It is so funny. It keeps your attention. There's so many aspects that just are laugh out loud, from Madame Tracy's seance to the burning unkillable car with Crowley and Hassa in it, to the possession of Madame Tracy by Aziraphale. That is awesome. The guard on the airbase, JP Tyler, the neighborhood representative in Tadfield, the roller coaster ride of Adam and his friends Pepper, Brian and Wensleydale. And it's great just to have really significant moments with Adam and them. It's just really nicely done. And so for me, this is a 5 Southern Pansies out of 5 for absolute sure.
Excellent. Yeah, I have to say, we kind of commented on it at the beginning of the season that we've never done a comedy show as such before. We've had comedy. You know, we did things like Agent Carter, which has comedy in the shows. Some of the Defenders shows have had comedy in them. Gotham has some dark comedy in it as well. Some other shows that we've done. But this is our first all-out comedy. And I have never seen you laugh so hard at a TV episode that we've covered for the podcast, John. This is definitely one that I could see was going to be in your top 5 out of 5 level. Comedy. Absolutely.
This really is, you know, this has my top joint seance scene caught on camera ever.
We want to see the horror movie Ouija Board after this, John. Maybe that'll be another cinematic, amazing moment of a seance.
Maybe, but somehow I doubt it. Yeah.
Let's get on to some feedback. If you want to send any feedback to our Pratchett postbag, you can email us at goodomenspodcast@gmail.com. Go to our website at tvpodcastindustries.com and leave us a voicemail over on the right-hand side of the website. Up to 90 seconds of your thoughts. Or, as we said, you can record your thoughts and email them to us. You can go over to find us on Twitter at tvpodindustries, or go to Facebook at facebook.com/TV Podcast Industries to join us over there. There's all the ways you can get in contact with us. And if you do miss out on our final episode, if you're watching this much later in the year and you're watching the episodes and just want to let us know your thoughts, we'd love to hear from you. Email us at that email address and we'll pick up your thoughts and we'll respond to you, because we want to hear what everybody thought about Good Omens overall. Our first bit of feedback in the Pratchett postbag comes from Bob Phillips on Facebook.
Yes, Bob says, you know those self-powered toy cars you used to drag back using their rear wheels to wind some sort of rubber band or battery before letting them go right into your sibling's leg or grandparents' skirting board? This episode felt very much like that. drawing back, full of excitement and anticipation, and paused on the brink of destruction. That's a nice metaphor there, Bob.
I love that.
I'm really liking that. It is. There's so much anticipation. I totally get that metaphor for this episode, for sure.
Yeah, it's really exciting. There's a great moment, and you know you're going to spend the rest of the day locked up in your bedroom after getting a bit of a hit from your parents for smacking them in the legs or breaking your toy car.
Yeah, exactly. Bob says, I really, really like the choice of musical accompaniments. From the rescue attempt of You're My Best Friend to Bohemian Rhapsody. Crowley's car radio was tuned perfectly. The seance scene was a masterpiece of overdramatic from Miranda Richardson, and it was wonderful to see the return of the border agent, who surely deserves a day off now.
Oh, that moment when Famine is saying to her, I'm here to get to the end of the world, and she goes, that sounds nice, dear. You're going, this woman needs to be fired for her job.
Exactly. You can really tell that it's in a pre-world before the craziness that, you know, everyone may be a terrorist that goes through an airport. You can tell it's written like that, because I think you even turned around to me and said, yeah, surely that would flag anyone up on the system if he said, I'm here for the end of the world.
Absolutely.
So, more innocent days.
No, but I think once again, it's the point that, as God's saying, these things are presented in front of you. You don't really see them happening. This is what Famine is saying in his head almost to her. He's not actually saying it, or she's not picking up on it, because it's not possible this guy could be talking about the Armageddon and he's going to cause it.
Yeah, no, exactly. Bob finishes off with other highlights: the motorbikes versus pedal cycles at the edge of Armageddon, and the leaderboard on the computer game in the cafe, where the riders of the apocalypse met. Death couldn't beat Pratchett.
Yes, that's a little reference. I wanted to leave that one to Bob, because it is slightly noticeable. The scoreboard that has the leaderboard on the computer game has Terry Pratchett as number 1. T. Pratchett has the high score, and then all the other scores are from D.EATH. So showing that Death is a winner, but still can't beat Terry Pratchett.
Yeah,
love it. Really good touch.
Yeah, superb. Thank you so much, Bob, for the feedback. Really good to get your thoughts on these episodes, for sure.
Absolutely. And I feel really bad. I did go back to Steve Brown when he sent us in his voicemail for episode 4 and told him if he did it really quickly and watched episode 5, he could send us in a voicemail in time for episode 5 coverage. I do feel bad, but thanks very much, Steve, for sending in your voicemail to us. We'll play it now.
Hello, Good Omens podcast. This is Steve, and just a couple quick thoughts on Doomsday Option. When the episode started, I thought I'd missed something, but they did a really good job of catching me back up to where I was and to what was going on. Loved the interaction between Aziraphale and the commander. When you're discorporated, get out of here. It was great. Absolutely loved Adam's turn, because at first I'd actually written down in my notes, I'd actually written that he's embracing this idea of becoming the Antichrist, and he's raving mad, stark raving mad. But we see towards the end he makes that shift and that twist, which was really unexpected and pleasant to me anyway. And love Crowley's car on fire, and he's driving, and the man Tyler not being able to say it because it's too obvious. It just was great. Really funny episode. And I really thought it was going to take a dark turn. I thought that it was suddenly going to become so super serious, and it didn't. So I was really glad to see that, and I can't wait to see how the series ends. And I hope I get this to you before you record. Talk to you later.
Thank you, Steve, so much for that. Yeah, I must say I was really pleasantly surprised by Adam's turn and his shift. Because it was nice to see the 4 kids on their cycles heading off to save the world. Even though Adam is probably the cause of the current situation, but
cause of, he's the tool of the devil.
Well,
he's the Antichrist,
exactly. But I must say I had the same feeling. You know, that with the red eyes at the start of the episode, you know, he's embracing the voices that are going on in his head. He's embracing his role as the Antichrist, and I'm really glad that you had that shift. Yeah,
you're right that there is something really positive about that. Just even the idea that even the Antichrist has a choice to not be the Antichrist, not be the bringer of Armageddon, as long as he's surrounded by good people who tell him when he's wrong. You know, I like that idea. It's really, really sweet. Looking forward to this final episode. That was such a fun episode to watch. I'm really looking forward to our final episode.
Definitely. Yeah, thank you, Steve. Thanks, you,
Steve.
Bob. It's really good to hear your thoughts, and thank you everyone else as well for popping on like Facebook and just saying a few bits of how good they're enjoying Good Omens and our coverage as well, I think. So
yes, thanks, folks.
It's really nice. Yeah. Remember, you can subscribe to our podcast on any godly or devilish podcast player over at tvpodcastindustries.com. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and of course Google Podcasts as well. And if you're over there, please subscribe, rate us, and leave a review. To share the podcast is to share the love.
Exactly. And check out podcastica.com for other podcasts such as The Walking Dead Cast, which is back with Fear the Walking Dead Season 5, Episode 2 this week. House Podcastica just started their coverage of Handmaid's Tale, which released 3 episodes in one day last week. They're doing the same as we do, where they do 1 episode at a time in each episode they're covering. Big show, and definitely a great podcast covering that one. Strange Indeed also discussing another show that released 3 episodes last week, Black Mirror. They covered the 2nd episode of season 5 of Black Mirror by mistake because they thought it was the first episode. But as with Black Mirror, it doesn't really matter what order you watch them in. They're all fun episodes and all very different, so they're all completely separated from each other. So check out their coverage over at podcastica.com.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we will be back with our review of Good Omens Episode 6, the very last day of the rest of their lives. That will be out next. This is the penultimate episode of Good Omens here on TV Podcast Industries. And of course, we are going to be back here with Marvel, their final Netflix show, Jessica Jones Season 3, which will begin on TV Podcast Industries on June 14th. Mm-hmm. And we will also be over on Defenders TV Podcast as well.
For the final time,
For the final time, yeah.
The title of the last episode of Good Omens, the very last day of the rest of their lives, it feels like that's what it's like for our podcast at the moment, because they keep dropping all these 13-episode shows and 6-episode shows with Good Omens, and it's the last ever that we're doing. So we did Gotham, which was going out weekly. We've done 6 episodes of Good Omens, which all came out in one day. And now, next week, the final Netflix Marvel show, Jessica Jones, is going to be out all in one day. We'll be podcasting it over the course of a bunch of weeks because we want to really cover this one as best we possibly can. Usually we do it in 2 episodes per week. So if you're going to be watching that, follow us over on tvpodcastindustries.com. Make sure you're subscribed to it. Even if you're subscribed to the Good Omens podcast, that will only have the 6-episode coverage that we're doing for Good Omens. Make sure you find tvpodcastindustries.com and subscribe to us there so you can get that coverage, our final Marvel Netflix show. Oh, all saddening. End of the world, John. End of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But we'll be cracking into the end of the world pretty soon, too. Thanks so much for joining us, fellow acolytes. It's been great to talk to you about this episode of Good Omens.
Yes, as always, fellow acolytes, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Remember, the apocalypse waits for no one. Right, everyone, we'll have to get a wiggle on. And after we've wiggled on, please come back and join us for the final episode of Good Omens here on TV Podcast Industries. It will be great to speak with you again.
Bye.
Bye.
The apocalypse is coming. Grab your hard hat, Donald Dennis.
The Angel tells Crowley, Demon, to get his arse to Hadfield Air Base while he finds a body... Jesus. Don't say that with a few drinks in you.
No.
Not that I've had any.
You don't want to be a drunken demon.
Not that. Of course, I've not had any.
No. But he does have the wonderful weapon, the thunder gun of Witchfinder Colonel. But he does have this wonderful weapon, the thunder good... But he does have this wonderful weapon, the thunder good of Thunder good? Damn it.
Thunder gun of Witchfinder Colonel
Dalrymple.
Dalrymple.
Dalrymple. Dalrymple. Yeah, Dalrymple.